Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruna. Our guest is Stacy Reimer, founder and executive director of Armory Legal Center. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. Actually, we were just saying I was introduced to you through a friend, mutual friend.
Right.
And so she said you were perfect for my show, so I was glad to hear that. And you have lots of information and important information to tell people to be on the lookout, because your topic today is domestic human trafficking, which is, quite a heavy topic, but it's in the news. And so I'm glad we're able to talk about it and give people information and websites or things where they could go to if they're interested in helping, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's start with you. And how did you get interested in such a topic?
Sure. So yes, it is a very heavy topic. And the way that I was first introduced to it was through my undergrad experience. We actually watched a documentary about human trafficking, and it was happening in India. And I really felt shocked by what was going on. And I'll never forget watching that video, because there were actually young girls that were being sold for sex, and they were being kept in really confined spaces. And so it was really quite horrible. And so from there, that really prompted me to join the Peace Corps, where I was a volunteer for 2 years. I worked in Eastern Europe. And during that time, I also was exposed to the issue of human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking. And felt pretty hopeless during that time, feeling like there wasn't a lot that I could do to make a difference. And when I came back to the United States, I also learned that this issue was also happening here. And that's probably when I was the most shocked, was to learn that it was happening here in the United States.
Yeah. Yes, I can understand that. And I think we're going to talk later about it being in our own backyard, so to speak.
Right.
And it is quite disturbing, right? But you were in Peace Corps in Bolivia, and then you came back here. And then, you know what, I should first ask you to define domestic human trafficking for us.
Sure. So that's something that is a little bit confusing, because a lot of times people think of trafficking and they think that it only happens internationally, which it absolutely happens internationally. And people are crossing borders. They're taking people across borders for forced labor and for forced sex. However, it also happens domestically, and under the law, there does not need to be an element of movement. What needs to happen under the law is force, fraud, or coercion. For a minor, anyone that's under the age of 18, in the realm of sex trafficking, there just has to be a commercial sex act, and that's considered trafficking under the law.
Yeah. But how did you actually realize it was happening here at home, though?
Well, so I had some really great mentors and teachers. I went to Georgetown for law school, and I took a lot of classes there about different topics, things like domestic violence and human trafficking. And then I also did a lot of internships. And so through the internships is where I was really able to actually work with some of the survivors of human trafficking. And it was actually through meeting the survivors that the light bulb went off for me, realizing that, yes, this really does happen here.
So you were in graduate school and you had an internship. I mean, that's amazing that you met you were meeting the survivors who had been somehow pulled out of it. Is that it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell us the story that really hit you, that made you say, I want to work with these girls, I want to help these girls, I want to involve my life, or this will be my passion around helping these people. Gosh. It's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the most striking things to me when I was first learning about this issue was when I was in the Peace Corps, and there was a young girl that I was working with. I was teaching her things like English and life skills, and she was 13 years old, and what I had found out was that her mother had actually sold her for sex when she was only 7 years old. And she had a lot of emotional issues, a lot of trauma, and so it was very difficult for her to, sit still in a classroom, and just honestly, the future for her didn't look very bright, and I could really see that it came from those issues that occurred when she was younger.
Oh, certainly, yeah. You said, and I have heard that sometimes parents don't have money, they'll sell children. Are you able to say what country this person would come from, where the mother sold their daughter?
Well, that was occurring when I was in the Peace Corps, which was in Bulgaria and Eastern Europe.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it happens even here in the United States.
With parents, you're saying, in the United States selling a child?
Sometimes with parents.
didn't
More
realize
often it
that.
happens with foster parents, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. But I guess I don't know, it's silly to say, but it's almost like, I can see foster parents to some, I mean, not at all, but I
Right.
mean, you can think about, they're not their real parents, but a real parent doing it. It's unbelievable, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell us a couple of little stories that made you say, I do want to continue working or start working with these girls.
Oh, sure. Other stories, another story to put things in perspective as far as what's happening in the United States.
Yeah, good.
We've had clients that have been trafficked from a foster care situation. So, for example, someone who was in a foster care situation nearing the age of 18, also approached by an older man who said, I want to be your boyfriend, I want to take care of you, let's get you out of this bad situation, you can come with me, only to find out that the new situation was actually a work situation where she was forced into sex work.
Oh, into prostitution. Yeah, and that I have read things about that. Yeah. Well, now, then from there, you decided to set up your own, your executive director of Amara Legal Center. Tell us what Amara Legal Center does and who it helps. So
Sure.
maybe start with what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Armory Legal Center, we were founded in 2013, so we're about 4 years old now. And our main focus is on free legal services for survivors of sex trafficking and for anyone that's been involved in commercial sex, no matter how they came into that field. We do the most typical things that people need in this situation. So that might be divorce or custody or domestic violence law, as well as criminal defense and criminal record sealing. Those are our 5 main topics that we work on.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think I pulled up your website and I did see those topics, but I didn't go into too many of them yet.
Oh, yeah,
so maybe
no,
you
that's
can
okay.
explain a little bit.
Sure. So a lot of people are pretty surprised to hear criminal defense is one of the things that we do work on.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, many victims of trafficking are also arrested for prostitution. And so that happens right here in Montgomery County, as well as Prince George's County and D.C. and Northern Virginia. Those are the areas where we work. And typically that happens through sting operations, meaning that police officers are setting up dates or appointments with girls online. And then when they arrive at the date, they'll arrest the people that are in the hotel room. 9 times out of 10, the actual trafficker, the person that's more managing the situation, is not the one that's being arrested. It's the young women that are being arrested.
Well, I don't understand. Why is the young woman arrested rather than the trafficker, or can they not get to the trafficker? You'll have to go into that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One, first of all, the trafficker does make it hard for him to be found. So he has the young women check the hotel room out in their own names instead of his name. They carry the cell phones. They set up the dates online. And so there's not a good paper trail that would lead a police officer back to the trafficker. And he may not even be on the premises. He might be in the parking lot or across the street. And so he's not in the area. However, he's controlling the situation oftentimes through things like threats of violence or actual violence or sexual assault. And so a lot of times the young women feel like they can't go anywhere else. As far as why those girls are arrested, sometimes police officers, they want to arrest in order to get information about the trafficker. And so, of course, for our perspective is that's not the ideal way to do an investigation. It'd be much better to create an environment where they could come to the police officer and give information, but not with the threat of arrest or criminal charges hanging over their heads.
Yeah, that's it's amazing, it's interesting, and it's very complex.
It really is. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, I'm surprised. Well, not surprised, but it's just so complex. Did you, now of course I had asked you earlier, are you a lawyer? And you said yes. So did you go to law school after you decided you wanted to work into the domestic human trafficking, or did you go to law school first and then get involved in this whole situation?
Yeah, so actually I did. When I went to law school, I knew I wanted to work on human trafficking. That's what I entered law school thinking about. I was thinking more on the international side of things, and so it really wasn't until I lived here for a few years in D.C. and realized that it was happening here that I felt very compelled to stay and do something here.
Yeah, I know we're in the D.C. area. We're actually in Maryland and Montgomery County, and then it says also Prince George's. So here it is happening. It's quite disturbing. Yeah, but how did you find out? I mean, it just seems such a different world.
Right.
How did you even find out that it was happening here? Because you met them when you went to try to help with some other, like in your internship, and then?
Yeah, it was through the volunteer work, so through interning and volunteering with different organizations, as well as talking a lot with my professors. So my professors knew the different nonprofits in town that were working on this issue, so I just started to connect with them.
I see.
And the thing that I found about 4 years ago is that there weren't very many lawyers working on the issue. There were people that were providing social services, so things like counseling and case management to the survivors, but there were very few people providing direct legal services. And so that's what really compelled me into this area.
Yeah. But I know on your website, I read the quote that I thought was wonderful. You said, Armory Legal Services provide these services for free, or the free services are at the heart, that's what it was, at the heart of your Armory Legal Center. So how do you get funded, and how are you able to do this?
Yeah, so all of our services are free, and that is, you're right, it's at the core of what we do. We absolutely do not charge. We don't ask for people's income, you know, when they come to us. There's really, we try to have, you know, no barriers to entry, as few as possible into our services. And then the way that we're funded is through just the generosity of a lot of different entities and people. So we have individual donors, we have a board of directors that also donates their own money, and then we have family foundations as well as government grants that fund the work.
I see. I think before we break, I just wanted to ask you how people get caught up in this. And well, you kind of mentioned with selling, but is that the only way, or
Yeah, so a lot of times, and you know, it happens in so many different ways, so I can only speak to what happens typically with our clients. Often it happens through a trafficker seeing someone who appears to be vulnerable. So, you know, we've had a client that was trafficked because she was walking home from school, and it's not a situation where someone was kidnapped, and typically, I mean, we've actually never had a case where someone was kidnapped, but it's more of a luring. They're speaking to them, they're creating a relationship with them, they're promising them things like clothing, money, a better lifestyle. And so they'll go with them willingly. It just turns into something that's much more coercive later down the road.
Oh, I see. Okay, we'll go into more detail again after the break.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
We'll break for a short public service announcement.
Time to wake up. I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Don't forget, you've got a job to do today.
Hey, Mom. I got the job. Thanks.
I've got the job. Welcome aboard.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right in your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does.
And like that, you're a job creator.
Welcome back to It's a Woman's World. We're speaking with Stacy Reimer on the topic of domestic human trafficking. Stacy, we covered lots of things earlier about defining what human trafficking is, and a little bit about the actual girls being arrested for that. So let's go on to give us some examples. I wanted to ask you about what Armory Legal Services does and how people can benefit from them.
Sure.
Yeah, from it.
So typically when we get a new client, they typically have multiple legal issues. It's usually not just one legal issue. So for example, we might have someone that has a criminal record, but is also being asked to testify against their trafficker. So in a scenario like that, we would do a legal intake and make sure that we assess all the different legal issues, see what they're eligible to receive, and assign an attorney to that person. And for example, in this scenario, say that someone has a criminal record and they're eligible for having that expunged, we would move through the process to make sure that that record goes off. And then secondly, we would help them prepare to testify against their trafficker if that's something that they're wanting to do. So we would speak with law enforcement on their behalf and the prosecutors on their behalf. We would help them write a victim impact statement. We'd also make sure that we're asking the prosecutor for restitution on their behalf. So there's lots of different things that we can do for people. And you know, specifically as far as how would that impact their life, when someone, for example, does not have a criminal record anymore, they're all of a sudden eligible for employment in a way that they weren't before, for different housing opportunities and educational opportunities. It just makes life a whole lot easier, and it actually allows them to have a lot more stability.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I guess I'm confused about, you know, you see movies, TV shows, and they're always showing you people on the street, but how do the girls actually come to you? How do they find you?
So they typically find us through our partner agencies. We work a lot with different nonprofits that are providing things like case management and counseling or housing. And once those organizations do an intake with their clients, they'll find that there's legal issues that are popping up, and then they can give us a call. We also go and do legal intake at different nonprofits. And so we basically set up shop, a little legal clinic for the afternoon, and anyone that wants to can come and talk with an attorney.
Oh, that's wonderful. And the girls, obviously there are girls who want to come and want to get out of it, and they know enough to want to get out of it.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. Tell us, what's the biggest misconception that people have about domestic human trafficking?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. One that I had mentioned before, a couple that I mentioned before was there's no requirement for movement in order for something to be called trafficking. You do not have to move across borders. You don't even have to move outside of your own home. And you could still be considered a victim of trafficking because you're being exploited. And you're, you know, something that's also a misconception is that it happens through things like kidnappings. Of course, that might happen here and there, but I've been doing this work for about 4 years, and I just haven't seen that happen here in the area where it's been a kidnapping situation. Typically, it's someone that has befriended a young person, and that's how the exploitation occurs, is through this, under the guise of friendship, really.
Oh, I see. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that you're facing, that Armory Legal Center is facing to help this, and what's the biggest challenge maybe that the young girls are facing?
Oh, sure. So as an organization, you know, we face a lot of challenges. One is making sure that we can stay in contact with our clients. A lot of times they don't have access to good shelter or cell phones, and so we might lose contact with them, and that can be a scary time. We don't know where they are, and it's not their fault by any means, but because they're in these situations that are dangerous, sometimes it's not very easy for them to give us a call and for us to know where they are. And then as far as our clients, the biggest challenges that they're facing, there's so many challenges. I think the biggest challenge that they face is just regaining their lives, regaining that stability that maybe they had before they became involved in trafficking. For the vast majority of our clients, they do have a criminal record, and so they've been going on a pathway where they weren't able to go to college, they weren't able to get a job the way that a lot of other kids their age have done. And so they're really starting at ground zero. And if they have children, that makes it even more difficult because they want to also provide for their children, keep their family safe, keep their family together.
Oh, right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. You know what I just thought of now? A success story. Do you have a success story or two you can tell us about?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we have a lot of success stories.
Oh, good.
You know, one that whenever I think of success story, one of the ones that I love to talk about is a client who we were able to help her with criminal defense, she was wrongly accused of prostitution, and then we were able to remove the record from her criminal record, which has now allowed her to go on and become very successful, attending college, having a part-time job, and really just living a life that is that everyone would view as very normal and very successful.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do they stay in touch with you by any chance?
They do. Yes,
Really?
our clients definitely stay in touch with us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, to keep a base or knowing that they can continue to succeed.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I think is so valuable about our services is that we are we're giving them a contact for an adult that cares about them here in the area. And so, something that's been great is when, say that a case closes with one of our clients, they might still refer one of their friends to us. And so they see us as a trusted partner, and they can call on us to help their friends as well.
Tell people how they can get in touch with you and Amara Legal Services if they would like to get in touch with you.
Oh, sure. So one of the best ways is to go to our website. It's www.amaralegal.org. So that's AMARALEGAL.org. You can also email us. It's info@amaralegal.org. But yeah, on our website, there's a form where you can either request support if you're someone that might need some help, or if you want to make a referral for somebody else.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Well, how can somebody decide if I really need to get in touch with you? And is this is this actually something that's human trafficking? And would I be putting myself in a situation and maybe I'd be embarrassing the person because it really wasn't? It's a very heavy decision there to even decide to call.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of confidential hotlines that people can call. The largest one is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Sure. That's a 24-hour hotline, and the great thing about that is they'll make a case and then also pass that case along to local law enforcement.
Oh, good. Yeah. And I guess what's the one most important thing if somebody wants to help that they could do?
Yeah.
Or two most important things that they could do.
Again, lots of things you can do.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that people can do is to educate themselves. So read about the issue, watch interviews, learn as much as you can, and then start to share that with other people. So, something that actually does, I think, make a difference is to share things on social media. So many people think, oh, well, that's something called slacktivism. It's not real activism, but you can actually share a lot of information on social media. And then the other thing that I like to tell people to do is to make sure that you understand what the warning signs of trafficking are. What are those red flags? If you were to see somebody, make sure that you could make a phone call as well to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. It's very important for anyone that's in contact with children or young people, so teachers, principals, bus drivers, the list goes on. But
tell us some of those warning signs, because you just mentioned that, and I don't know them.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure people don't.
Sure. So, something that I tell people is to just look at someone's surroundings. Is someone out, a young person, are they out late at night? Are they possibly dressed in a way where, say it's cold outside and they don't have a jacket on, or they don't have proper shoes on? So something like that might be a red flag. It doesn't mean that person is a victim of trafficking, but it's just something to watch out for.
Okay, so the first thing would be the child. I mean, many of these girls are children, really. Are they all, or most of them, I would imagine, are children, isn't it? So watch how they're dressed and see if they seem to be appropriately dressed. Okay, another warning sign.
Another warning sign is, are they being watched by anybody? Do you see a younger person with an older person that seems to be in control of the situation? A lot of times this has happened to nurses and doctors, where someone will come, a young person will come seeking medical treatment, and then they'll have an older person with them who's really in control of the situation and not allowing the younger person to answer the questions, and really kind of insisting on being in the room at all times.
Oh, I see. So it's a boyfriend, or did they say pimp? You see that on TV, that word. Is that correct?
So our clients don't typically use the word pimp. They might call that person boyfriend. For the the younger clients, a lot of times I've heard them use the word uncle. Or cousin, some kind of a family
Oh, and that
member.
sounds so much better and more normal and natural, so that in a situation, well, I'm sure they're not going to say that in front of people, but I wonder if they, oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. And so those are two specific, or three, the doctors and nurses. I imagine they are more alert than most of the normal, regular people are to the situation because they're caring for them and treating some of the girls.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing to remember in situations like this is that even if a doctor or nurse has been given a lot of training, and a lot of them have, which is wonderful, it's pretty common that the girl will not disclose what's going on. She's terrified. The trafficker has said, don't tell anybody about this. You absolutely cannot say a word. And so even if we know all the warning signs, that person may not disclose what's happening.
Well, what gets them to the point where they will disclose? And it's very difficult, I'm sure, for them.
Yeah, so a couple ways. The stories that I've heard where they do disclose is they might be feeling like they're extremely in danger and they have nowhere else to go, and they might disclose that way. The way that our clients disclose to us is after they've been arrested. Unfortunately, most of our clients come to us because they have been arrested. And so the great thing, though, about creating the lawyer-client relationship is that they can tell us what happened. It is confidential. And I think having, the fear of that criminal charge with them, they are a little bit more inclined to share what's been going on.
Oh, okay. And so if we leave people with one thing that you want, or two things that you want them to think about when they think about the words domestic human trafficking, what should come to our mind? What should we think of? How should we react? How can we help?
Right. Yeah, so, I think one thing is that I always tell people whenever I do trainings is to just have a lot of compassion for this population. They have really struggled. They've gone through a lot of different types of trauma. And so, the more that we can understand about what they've gone through, the more compassion I think we can have for them.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought and ending. And thank you for being here, Stacy, and we've given us some great information. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I hope you've enjoyed meeting our guest, Stacy Reimer, as much as I have, and you've learned some information about domestic human trafficking. If you know a woman who's gone above and beyond to contribute to our community, please email us. We're itsawomansworld@mmctv.org. Remember, it's a woman's world. I'm Carolyn Bruna. See you next time.